Hollywood is full of stars, but not all of them can act. For every Oscar-winning performance, there's another that makes you wonder. Did they even try? Big budgets, beautiful faces, and zero emotion. Some of these actors have turned bad acting into an art form. They forget lines, overact every scene, or deliver dialogue so flat it could put you to sleep. And yet, they're still famous. Still getting paid millions. Still showing up on screen like nothing happened. So why does Hollywood keep hiring them? Is it charisma, chaos, or just pure curiosity from the audience who can't look away? Let's count down 15 movie stars so bad they're unforgettable. 15. Madonna. Madonna didn't just want to rule music, she wanted to conquer Hollywood. The Queen of Pop believed her charisma could light up the silver screen just as easily as it electrified a stadium. When she stepped into film, it wasn't subtle. Red lips, fierce gaze, unshakable confidence. She looked like a star, walked like a star, and carried herself like the world owed her attention. But the screen has its own laws, and charm alone wasn't enough. In movies like Shanghai Surprise, Body of Evidence, and Swept Away, the glimmer faded fast. What audiences saw wasn't a character, it was Madonna trying to be a character. Her biggest flaw was mistaking attitude for acting. Every scene felt rehearsed, every emotion performed instead of felt. Whether she played a lover, a spy, or a saint, her delivery carried the same self-aware smirk, that knowing Madonna wink that worked in music videos but collapsed in film. Critics often said she acted like someone watching herself in a mirror. In Swept Away, she tried to blend vulnerability and arrogance. Instead, she looked perpetually confused, as if wondering why the camera wasn't applauding. The backlash was merciless. Rolling Stone called Swept Away a sunburned disaster, while The Guardian described her acting as emotionally hollow. Razzie Awards made her a recurring guest of honor, crowning her worst actress multiple times. Even fans joked that her best on-screen performance was still the version of herself in her music videos, because at least there, she didn't have to pretend. And yet, Hollywood couldn't look away. Every project she joined drew headlines, not for art, but for spectacle. Madonna understood controversy better than anyone. She knew failure could still sell tickets. Producers didn't hire her for subtlety. They hired her because her name alone guaranteed attention. To them, bad acting was just another form of marketing. When confronted about her acting reputation, Madonna stayed unapologetic. In interviews, she'd shrug and say, "I don't have to be a great actress, I just have to be interesting." It was classic Madonna, defiant, self-aware, and daring the world to keep talking. That confidence, some would call it delusion, kept her in the headlines long after others would have walked away. Maybe she was never meant to disappear into a role, because Madonna has always played only one character herself. Love her or hate her, she turned mediocrity into myth, and even her worst movies still carry that strange, hypnotic pull. In a way, she proved that being unforgettable doesn't always mean being good. Sometimes, being Madonna is enough. 14. Steven Seagal. Steven Seagal once looked like the ultimate action hero, tall, stone-faced, dressed in black, a master of Aikido who barely needed to move to destroy his enemies. In the late 80s and early 90s, he was Hollywood's silent assassin, the calm killer who spoke in whispers and snapped bones in seconds. On paper, he had everything: the martial arts skill of Bruce Lee, the mystique of Clint Eastwood, the confidence of a man who truly believed he couldn't lose. But while his fights were thrilling, his acting was another story, entirely one that fans remember for all the wrong reasons. Seagal didn't act so much as exist on screen. His characters had no emotional range. Whether he was mourning a friend, facing death, or delivering vengeance, he wore the same frozen stare. Dialogue slid from his mouth like sleep talk, mumbled and monotone, as if he were narrating a meditation tape. Critics joked that his ponytail showed more emotion than his face. Even in moments meant to be dramatic, Seagal seemed bored by his own heroism, gliding through explosions as if waiting for the catering break. Audiences noticed, and reviewers didn't hold back. The New York Times called his performances leaden, while Variety described him as a man tranquilized by his own ego. Online, his fight scenes became meme material, celebrated not for intensity but absurdity, a lumbering middle-aged man throwing invisible punches while extras politely fell over. And yet, somehow, his movies kept coming. Under Siege, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, the titles may have changed, but the expression never did. The reason was simple: Steven Seagal sold. His name meant guaranteed rentals, especially overseas, where audiences cared more about kicks than charisma. Even when theaters stopped calling, the straight-to-DVD market welcomed him like an old friend. He became his own genre, a factory of low-budget action where the plots were identical and the lead actor didn't have to move faster than a slow walk. Producers didn't need him to act, they needed him to exist. When asked about his critics, Seagal usually brushed them off with zen-like calm. He once claimed that real masters don't act, they are. To him, stillness was depth, and silence was power. Maybe he believed it. Maybe that belief was his final illusion, the idea that being unreadable equals being profound. But in the strange theater of bad cinema, Steven Seagal achieved something rare. He became unforgettable. Not because he brought emotion to his roles, but because he brought none at all. He turned blankness into brand, emptiness into entertainment, and in doing so, secured a place in Hollywood history, not as its brightest star, but as its most expressionless legend. 13. Tommy Wiseau. No one knows exactly where Tommy Wiseau came from, or how he found the money to make The Room, the film that turned him into a legend of disaster. He claimed to be from New Orleans, spoke with a vaguely European accent, and looked like a vampire who fell into a Hot Topic store. But when The Room premiered in 2003, audiences witnessed something miraculous, a movie so badly acted, so painfully written, that it became immortal. Wiseau didn't just star in a bad film, he created a cult masterpiece of cinematic failure. From the first line, it's clear something's wrong, and yet, you can't look away. His voice drifts in and out of accents, his emotions shift at random, and his expressions never match the words coming out of his mouth. One moment, he's laughing at tragedy. The next, he's shouting about betrayal like a soap opera villain who forgot the script. Every gesture feels wrong, every reaction mistimed, and yet, there's something hypnotic about it. The Room doesn't just fail at acting, it redefines what failure can look like. Critics called it the Citizen Kane of bad movies. Lines like, "You're tearing me apart, Lisa," became internet folklore, quoted by fans who knew Wiseau wasn't in on the joke. He won no awards, but achieved something rarer, a community of people who watched his movie not to mock him, but to celebrate the joyful chaos he created. Screenings around the world became rowdy midnight rituals, spoons thrown at the screen, fans shouting lines in unison, turning cinematic tragedy into comedy gold. And Hollywood noticed. Years later, James Franco's The Disaster Artist turned Wiseau's failure into triumph, earning Oscar buzz and introducing him to a new generation. Somehow, Tommy Wiseau, the man who couldn't act right or direct, became famous for not being able to act right or direct. In an industry obsessed with perfection, he stood out precisely because he had none. Wiseau himself never apologized for The Room. In interviews, he called it a real human story and insisted it was misunderstood genius. Whether that's delusion or genius in disguise doesn't really matter anymore. Because against all odds, he won. His disaster became art. His mistakes became memes, and his face pale, intense, eternally confused, became part of Hollywood folklore. Tommy Wiseau might be one of the worst actors to ever step in front of a camera, but in the strangest twist imaginable, he turned that failure into immortality. His name will always live on not as a symbol of talent, but as proof that sometimes being so bad is the most unforgettable performance of all. 12. Megan Fox. When Megan Fox burst onto the screen in Transformers, the world stopped breathing. The camera adored her sunlit skin, slow-motion hair flips, the kind of beauty Hollywood builds entire movies around. For a moment, she seemed unstoppable, the new Angelina Jolie, the ultimate femme fatale of the 21st century. But behind that perfect frame was a truth Hollywood tried to hide. Megan Fox couldn't act her way out of a glossy car commercial. Her performances were always the same: sultry gaze, parted lips, monotone voice. Whether she was fighting aliens, flirting with danger, or running for her life, her expression never changed. Critics called her a mannequin with a pulse. Her delivery in Jennifer's Body was so flat, it made the dark comedy feel like an accidental parody. Even in emotional scenes, she looked like she was posing for a magazine cover rather than playing a human being in pain. The camera loved her, but the audience couldn't find the person behind the image. The backlash came fast. Reviewers tore her apart, calling her the poster child of style over substance. On forums, fans joked that her acting had only two settings: seductive or confused. Michael Bay, the director who launched her, publicly clashed with her after she compared him to Hitler, a move that got her fired from the Transformers franchise. Overnight, the woman Hollywood once called the next big thing became its favorite punchline. And yet, Fox refused to disappear. Despite the criticism, she kept working in indie projects, thrillers, even comedies. Because, ironically, she still had something Hollywood couldn't resist: magnetism. Producers knew her name alone drew attention, even when audiences came only to mock her. She became a symbol of how the industry treats women worshipped for beauty, punished for ambition, and rarely given the chance to prove more. In interviews, Megan Fox revealed a different side. She admitted feeling objectified, misunderstood, and terrified of being laughed at. "I was never trying to be a joke," she once said, "but that's how they decided to see me." It was a rare flash of vulnerability from someone the media painted as all attitude. She wasn't oblivious to the criticism, she just refused to let it break her. Today, her career has softened, her voice more measured. She's not the teenage fantasy anymore, but a woman aware of her image and of how that image nearly destroyed her. Maybe she'll never be known for range or depth, but Megan Fox embodies something just as telling: the tragedy of being too beautiful in a place that only pretends to love you for it. She may never win an Oscar, but she's already won something else: endurance. Because in a town that loves to chew up pretty faces and spit them out, Megan Fox is still standing. And that, in its own strange way, might be her best performance yet. 11. Nicolas Cage. Few actors have traveled as wildly between brilliance and disaster as Nicolas Cage. In the 90s, he was unstoppable, an Oscar-winning chameleon who could make you cry in Leaving Las Vegas and cheer in Con Air. He was fearless, unpredictable, and magnetic, the kind of performer who could turn even a bad script into something unforgettable. But somewhere along the way, his energy stopped serving the story and started devouring it. By the 2000s, Nicolas Cage wasn't just acting anymore, he was unleashing. Cage's downfall wasn't lack of effort. It was too much of it. Every emotion was cranked to 11. His screams, his manic eyes, his sudden bursts of laughter, they all became memes before memes were even a thing. In films like The Wicker Man or Ghost Rider, his performances teetered between madness and self-parody. One critic joked, "Cage doesn't act in scenes, he attacks them," and it was true. He treated every moment like an exorcism, whether the movie deserved it or not. Audiences didn't know what to make of him. Some called him a genius, others called him unwatchable. The internet crowned him the king of overacting, creating endless supercuts of his most chaotic moments, wide-eyed rants, melodramatic collapses, the infamous "not the bees" from The Wicker Man. The same intensity that once made him powerful now made him ridiculous. The man who once defined unpredictability had become predictable. You expected him to go off the rails, and he always did. Part of it was money. Cage's notorious spending castles, dinosaur skulls, rare comics left him buried in debt. To pay it off, he took every role that came his way, no matter how bad. Straight-to-video thrillers, forgotten action flicks, bizarre indies, he did them all. The more he worked, the less his name meant. Hollywood's wildest actor became its hardest-working cautionary tale. And yet, the strangest twist is that Cage never stopped believing in his craft. In interviews, he calls his style nouveau shamanic acting, a spiritual approach that sees performance as possession. He insists there's method in the madness, and sometimes he's right. In Pig and Mandy, he proved he could still deliver performances of haunting control, reminding the world that beneath the chaos lives a true artist. Nicolas Cage remains a paradox. Too good to ignore, too strange to fully admire. He exists in a category of his own, a performer both mocked and revered, celebrated and pitied. To some, he's the worst actor alive. To others, he's cinema's last true original. Maybe the truth is somewhere in between. Because even when Nicolas Cage fails, he does it with such ferocious sincerity that you can't look away. And in a Hollywood full of fakes, that might be the most real thing of all. 10. Hayden Christensen. There was a time when Hayden Christensen was supposed to be Hollywood's next great leading man. Chosen by George Lucas himself to play Anakin Skywalker, the future Darth Vader, he had the face, the youth, and the weight of a mythic legacy on his shoulders. Every magazine hailed him as the chosen one, destined to define a generation of sci-fi heroes. But when Attack of the Clones hit theaters, the prophecy collapsed. Instead of menace or heartbreak, audiences got something else entirely. Awkward pauses, flat dialogue, and a delivery so wooden it could have built the Death Star. Christensen's downfall wasn't just bad acting, it was the wrong kind of bad. He wasn't ridiculous enough to be camp, nor raw enough to feel real. His line readings were stiff, robotic, often paired with a blank stare that sucked the air out of every scene. "I don't like sand," he said, in one of the most mocked lines in movie history, and it wasn't just the script, it was the tone, the rhythm, the total absence of emotion. His Anakin wasn't tragic, he was awkward. And for fans who had waited decades for this story, that was unforgivable. The critics were merciless. Reviewers called his performance vacant, soulless, a charisma black hole. Even George Lucas, ever diplomatic, admitted that directing Christensen was a challenge. The backlash was immediate and brutal, the kind that doesn't just end a role but scars a reputation. By the time Revenge of the Sith arrived, the damage was done. Hayden wasn't seen as a complex anti-hero, he was seen as the guy who ruined Darth Vader. But what's forgotten is how much pressure he faced. At barely 20, he was stepping into one of the most iconic roles in film history, one that even veteran actors might have cracked under. The dialogue was stiff, the direction rigid, and Lucas's digital world left little room for spontaneity. In truth, Hayden Christensen never had a chance to win. The system failed him before the audience ever did. For years he vanished, moving to a farm, raising horses, and staying out of the spotlight. Hollywood wrote him off, but time, as it often does, brought redemption. When he returned to play Darth Vader in Disney's Obi-Wan Kenobi, fans greeted him with the warmth of nostalgia, not ridicule. He was no longer the awkward kid with bad dialogue, he was the survivor of impossible expectations. Hayden Christensen might never erase the ghosts of those early performances, but maybe he doesn't need to, because sometimes failure isn't a full stop, it's just a painful chapter in a story still being written. In the end, he taught Hollywood one hard lesson. Even the galaxy's chosen one can fall flat and still rise again. 9. John Travolta. Few careers in Hollywood have been as dazzling or as uneven as John Travolta's. He danced his way into pop culture with Saturday Night Fever and Grease, redefining cool for an entire generation. His swagger, his smile, that effortless rhythm, he was America's sweetheart in a leather jacket. And then, like a jukebox suddenly unplugged, the magic faded. The 80s came, and Travolta's charisma began to look like overacting. By the 2000s, the man who once lit up dance floors had become a running joke, starring in movies that critics said shouldn't have been greenlit, let alone watched. Travolta's acting downfall wasn't sudden, it was slow erosion. His performances grew exaggerated, his emotional beats overwrought. What once looked magnetic now felt forced, an actor chasing the ghost of his own legend. In Battlefield Earth, his most infamous role, he played an alien tyrant with a voice somewhere between a cartoon villain and a drunk Shakespearean actor. Reviewers called it an acting apocalypse. In Gotti, he tried to resurrect his edge, but the wooden dialogue and his melodramatic delivery turned a mob drama into unintentional comedy. Critics tore him apart. Rolling Stone labeled Battlefield Earth the worst movie ever made, while The Guardian described his performance as so bizarre it feels like performance art. Social media wasn't kinder. Clips of his overblown monologues turned into memes, his exaggerated expressions fuel for endless parody. Even the infamous Adele Dazeem Oscar slip when he mispronounced Idina Menzel's name became a symbol of how far he'd drifted from his former grace. And yet, there's something tragic about Travolta's decline. He never stopped trying. While other stars disappeared, he kept working, embracing weird scripts, chasing redemption, reinventing himself as a self-aware meme. He knew people were laughing, but he leaned into it. He danced again, smiled again, and kept showing up, as if refusing to let Hollywood erase him twice. Behind the public missteps, though, is a man scarred by grief. Travolta lost his son Jet in 2009, and later his wife, Kelly Preston. Those tragedies shadowed his career, softening his public image. In interviews, he speaks with quiet resilience, not bitterness. He may never regain his old brilliance, but he's learned something deeper: humility. John Travolta's career reads like a cautionary tale about fame's cruel cycles. He rose, fell, rose again, and fell harder, but he never vanished. Maybe that's the true measure of his talent. Not consistency, but persistence. He might not always act well, but he always shows up. In a strange way, Travolta has become what every Hollywood survivor eventually becomes: a living paradox. Too campy to be great, too charming to be forgotten. The man who once taught the world to dance is still on the floor, moving to a rhythm only he can hear. 8. Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton never needed Hollywood. Hollywood needed her. She was already famous for being famous, the walking headline of the early 2000s, when paparazzi flashes were brighter than Oscars. With her diamond-studded phone, Chihuahua in hand, and her trademark phrase, "That's hot," Paris turned reality TV into empire. So when she stepped onto a movie set, it felt inevitable. If she could sell perfume, fashion, and tabloid covers, why not sell tickets? But the big screen is merciless, and it didn't take long for the world to realize Paris Hilton couldn't act. Her first major role in House of Wax seemed promising, a glossy slasher film, a perfect vehicle for a celebrity who understood spectacle. But instead of terror, audiences got confusion. Paris didn't scream so much as pose in fear, her reactions as rehearsed as her selfies. Critics said she died beautifully, and that was the only compliment. Her face, always camera-ready, betrayed no emotion beyond mild annoyance. Even in death scenes, she looked like she was auditioning for a perfume ad. Then came The Hottie and the Naughty, a romantic comedy so bad it became infamous. The film scored one of the lowest ratings in Rotten Tomatoes history. Reviewers described Hilton's performance as a black hole of charisma, a cosmic void where acting should be. It wasn't just bad, it was unforgettable in its badness. She won a Razzie Award for Worst Actress, and when asked about it, she simply smiled. "It's an honor. I've always been an icon." That was Paris, in a nutshell: aware, unbothered, untouchable. What made her failures fascinating was that she didn't care. She never pretended to be a serious actress. Acting was just another accessory in her brand, another way to stay in the spotlight. Even her badness became part of the Paris Hilton mythology, the billionaire Barbie who lived above consequence. In a strange way, she turned humiliation into marketing. People didn't go to her movies expecting art. They went to watch her. Years later, when she revealed that her public persona was an act, that the baby voice, the ditzy charm, the shallow image were all deliberate. The world had to pause. Was she really a bad actress, or was she just playing one all along? Her life became the longest performance in Hollywood history, a satire of fame, so convincing, most people never saw the joke. Paris Hilton might never deliver a powerful monologue or win an award, but she did something arguably more impressive. She became the blueprint for the influencer era, the idea that personality can outshine talent, that image can become its own form of art. She blurred the line between acting and existing until no one could tell which was which. In the end, maybe Paris Hilton wasn't the worst actress in Hollywood. Maybe she was the most honest. Because in a town built on performance, she never pretended to be anything more than exactly what she was, a star who didn't need to act to shine. 7. Taylor Lautner. For a brief, shining moment, Taylor Lautner was everywhere. His abs were on billboards, his grin on magazine covers, his name screamed by millions of fans at Twilight premieres. He was the teenage werewolf who turned jealousy into a global phenomenon. When he took off his shirt on screen, theaters erupted. Hollywood thought it had found its next big action star. But once the howling stopped, and the franchise ended, Lautner faced a cruel truth: fame can make you visible, but it can't make you good. Lautner's problem wasn't effort, it was limitation. His acting range stretched about as far as his smirk. Whether he was angry, heartbroken, or heroic, it all looked the same: furrowed brows, clenched jaw, quiet stare. In Twilight, that worked the brooding silence of a supernatural teen with impossible muscles. But when he tried to move beyond it, everything fell apart. In Abduction, his first major solo film, he tried to play a tortured young spy. Instead, critics said he looked like a Calvin Klein model trapped in a Bourne movie. Every line landed flat, every chase scene hollow. The backlash was swift. Reviewers compared him to cardboard, calling his performances emotionally vacant and acting by flexing. Rolling Stone joked that he should stick to running shirtless. It's what he does best. Even fans who once screamed his name quietly admitted what the critics had said all along. Lautner had the looks of a star, but not the instincts of one. Hollywood moved on faster than anyone expected. By his mid-20s, the roles stopped coming. Part of the problem was timing. Lautner came from an era that worshipped teen heartthrobs and abandoned them just as quickly. When Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart reinvented themselves in arthouse and indie films, Lautner vanished into silence. While they found complexity, he was stuck playing versions of the same role: handsome, brooding, underwritten. No one wanted to see him fail, but no one wanted to see him try again either. He eventually stepped away from the spotlight, living a quiet life far from the noise. When he does appear now, it's usually nostalgic, a reminder of a decade when being young, hot, and famous seemed like enough. In interviews, Lautner has admitted how fame messed with his confidence. "When you're the guy everyone screams for, you think it'll last forever," he said softly. But it doesn't. Taylor Lautner's story isn't one of arrogance or scandal, it's one of emptiness. A star built on hype, undone by silence. He wasn't terrible because he didn't care. He was terrible because Hollywood never taught him how to be anything other than beautiful. Today, he's a reminder of how cruelly the industry trades talent for trend. His name may have faded from marquees, but his rise and fall remain one of the most vivid examples of what happens when fame burns brighter than skill. For a few years, he was the hottest star in the world. Then the lights went out, and what was left was just a man who couldn't act his way out of his own shadow. 6. Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez was never just a performer, she was an empire. From the moment she burst onto the scene as Selena, Hollywood crowned her a star who could sing, dance, act, and sell anything. She was radiant, disciplined, magnetic. By the early 2000s, she had what few dared to dream of: a music career that filled stadiums and a movie career that filled theaters. But while her songs topped charts, her acting career became a long, glittering string of disappointments, a masterclass in how charisma can't always cover emptiness. J.Lo's biggest strength, her polish, became her curse. On screen, everything about her seemed too perfect, too controlled. Whether playing a maid, a cop, or a rom-com darling, she never disappeared into a role. She performed it like choreography. The gestures were right, the expressions precise, but the soul was missing. She cried beautifully, flirted flawlessly, and yet it all felt rehearsed. Even in serious films like Enough or The Boy Next Door, critics said she looked like she was acting in a perfume commercial about empowerment. The critical backlash was relentless. Jiggly, her infamous disaster from 2003 with then-boyfriend Ben Affleck, became one of the most mocked films of its decade. Reviewers called it painful to watch, chemistry-free, and an acting black hole. Lopez won multiple Razzie Awards, cementing her place in pop culture as the queen of glamorous flops, and yet the industry couldn't let her go. Every failure became part of her myth, the woman who could fall flat on Monday and headline the Super Bowl by Sunday. Why does Hollywood keep casting her? Because Jennifer Lopez doesn't just act, she markets emotion. Her name guarantees press, her image sells fantasy. Directors know that even if the performance doesn't work, the brand will. Audiences might roll their eyes at her line delivery, but they still show up for the spectacle, the hair, the confidence, the illusion of perfection. In a world addicted to image, J.Lo remains its most flawless mirror. Off-screen, Lopez has often addressed her critics with a mix of grace and defiance. "I work harder than anyone," she once said, "and I don't apologize for shining." And she means it. Whatever her limitations as an actress, her drive is unmatched. While others disappear after ridicule, she reinvents herself again and again until the laughter fades. That relentlessness is both her greatest gift and her biggest tragedy. Because for all her fame, Jennifer Lopez has never truly been believed. Audiences admire her, envy her, but rarely feel her. Her performances glimmer with effort, not emotion, a reminder that even the brightest stars can't fake authenticity. Yet maybe that's exactly why she fascinates us. She's the Hollywood illusion made flesh. Beautiful, tireless, untouchable. Jennifer Lopez might never give a performance that moves the world, but she's built a career that defies failure itself. In a business obsessed with perfection, she's proven that survival is the ultimate act, and no one performs survival better than J.Lo. 5. Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is one of the few actors in Hollywood whose legend doesn't rely on acting talent, and that might be exactly why people love him. He's charming without trying, kind without posing, humble in an industry built on ego. But even his biggest fans can admit it. Keanu Reeves is not a great actor. He's a presence, a feeling, a cultural phenomenon, but when it comes to emotional range, he's more blank slate than canvas. Early in his career, that blankness stood out. In Bram Stoker's Dracula, his stiff British accent and wooden delivery became the stuff of parody. Critics joked he sounded like a tourist pretending to be Shakespearean. His face often froze in the same puzzled expression, somewhere between deep thought and mild confusion. Whether he played a time-traveling teen in Bill and Ted, a heartbroken cop, or a romantic lead, he brought the same steady monotone, the same soft-eyed sincerity that somehow felt both touching and hollow. But here's the twist. Audiences didn't care. Even when critics called him lifeless, moviegoers saw something else, a kind of purity. He wasn't trying to act cool, he just was. In The Matrix, his natural stillness became a weapon. Neo's detached calm perfectly fit a world built on illusion. And later, in John Wick, that same emotionless quality turned into myth. He wasn't wooden anymore, he was stoic, haunted, dangerous. Suddenly, what had once been his weakness became his greatest strength. That transformation wasn't an accident. It was instinct. Keanu understood himself. Instead of forcing emotion, he learned to let silence carry weight. He stopped fighting his limitations and started embodying them. Few actors could make a single word "whoa" a generational catchphrase, but Keanu did it without irony. His restraint became part of his mystery. Critics still debate his talent. Some call him a man who acts like he's watching his own movie in real time. Others defend him as the last honest movie star, an actor who refuses to fake depth for applause. And maybe that's what sets him apart. He never performs emotion he doesn't believe. He just is. Off-screen, his legend grew even larger. The quiet generosity, the subway rides, the tragic losses they built, an aura no award could buy. Keanu Reeves became proof that kindness can outshine skill, that authenticity can be more cinematic than technique. He may never master the craft the way others have, but he mastered something more elusive: sincerity in a world built on lies. In the end, Keanu Reeves reminds us that bad acting isn't always a flaw. Sometimes it's just a different kind of truth. He may not deliver perfect performances, but he delivers something rarer: honesty. And in the age of polished pretenders, that might make him the most accidentally brilliant bad actor Hollywood has ever known. 4. Jessica Alba. Jessica Alba looked like she was born for Hollywood. With her flawless skin, smoldering stare, and effortless cool, she became the early 2000s dream girl, equal parts sweetness and danger. From Dark Angel to Fantastic Four, she radiated star power. Directors adored her. Magazines couldn't stop photographing her. But somewhere between the flashbulbs and the film reels, one truth became impossible to ignore. Jessica Alba couldn't act. Her performances were polished, but hollow, the kind of acting that hits all the right notes but never creates music. Whether she played a superhero, a dancer, or a love interest, the expression barely changed. Her voice hovered in that same flat register, her face frozen between worry and seduction. In Fantastic Four, where she played the Invisible Woman, critics joked that the title was prophetic. Her emotional presence was invisible too. Even when the world was ending, Alba looked like she was thinking about her next pose. The reviews were merciless. The New York Times called her a professional beauty trapped in a professional mess. Rolling Stone accused Hollywood of confusing a photograph for a performance. Online, fans noticed the pattern. She looked stunning in every frame, but felt distant, like someone acting through a glass wall. Her Razzie nominations piled up, and her box office draw faded. In a cruel twist, the industry that built her on perfection was now punishing her for it. But Alba's story didn't end in humiliation, it ended in escape. Tired of being typecast as the pretty face who couldn't deliver, she walked away from Hollywood's machine. "I wanted to be taken seriously," she said years later, "but they never saw me as anything but a hot girl." Instead of waiting for better roles, she built her own empire, The Honest Company, a billion-dollar business dedicated to clean living and self-made success. The critics who once mocked her acting now wrote about her business acumen. In hindsight, her wooden performances make sense. Jessica Alba was never comfortable pretending to be someone else. She was too guarded, too self-aware, too real for an industry obsessed with illusion. On camera, that translated as stiffness. Off camera, it became strength. Her beauty boxed her in, but her will broke her out. Today, Alba stands as a quiet rebuke to Hollywood's shallow casting system. She may never have mastered acting, but she mastered something far rarer: control over her own narrative. The woman once mocked for being emotionless now runs a company built on authenticity. Maybe that's her best revenge. Because in the end, Jessica Alba didn't fail at Hollywood. Hollywood failed her. It wanted an image, not a person. And when she stopped trying to please the camera, she finally became what the screen could never capture: real. 3. Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal dominated the basketball court like few men ever could, a 7-foot phenomenon with the strength of a freight train and the charm of a class clown. But when he traded his jersey for a movie set, the slam dunks stopped landing. Hollywood thought Shaq's larger-than-life personality would translate perfectly to the screen. Instead, audiences got one of the strangest legacies in entertainment: a superstar athlete who made some of the worst movies ever filmed. It started with Blue Chips, not terrible, just awkward, but things truly fell apart with Kazam. The film cast Shaq as a rapping genie who lives in a boombox and grants wishes to a kid. It was meant to be fun, magical, maybe even heartwarming. What it became was chaos. Shaq stumbled through lines like he was reading them off a teleprompter across the room. His emotions came and went at random. Sometimes he looked confused, other times just tired. Reviewers called it the cinematic equivalent of an airball. Kids laughed for the wrong reasons, adults left theaters in disbelief, and Shaq's acting career became a punchline overnight. But he didn't stop. He played a steel-armored superhero. In Steel, a movie so bad it made even comic book fans beg for mercy. Wearing a metal suit and mumbling through heroic speeches, he looked like a man trapped in a Halloween costume. Critics said he had the emotional range of a vending machine. Yet Shaq kept showing up, smiling through the disaster, seemingly immune to embarrassment. The truth is, Shaq was never chasing critical respect. He was chasing fun, the same spirit that made him beloved on the court. When fans mocked his performances, he joined in. "Yeah, I can't act," he once laughed in an interview. "But I had a good time trying." That self-awareness made him impossible to hate. Unlike many stars in this list, Shaq knew exactly how bad he was, and somehow that made him better. Still, the gulf between charisma and craft is hard to ignore. His on-screen timing was always a beat off, his tone mismatched, his delivery too slow or too loud. It's as if his body built for power couldn't shrink itself to fit the frame. In basketball, that size made him unstoppable. In movies, it made him alien. Hollywood doesn't know what to do with men that big, especially when their egos aren't. And yet, Shaq found a strange redemption. He leaned into parody, making fun of himself in cameos and commercials, turning failure into brand power. What started as mockery became myth. Today, when people mention Kazam, they don't roll their eyes, they smile. Because, in a way, it's not just a bad movie anymore. It's a relic of an era when stars could fail spectacularly and still be loved. Shaquille O'Neal will never be remembered as an actor, but maybe he doesn't need to be. His film career was a mess, sure, but it was a joyful mess, the kind only a man utterly comfortable with himself could make. He proved that sometimes the worst acting can come from the best spirits, and that's a legacy more charming than any Oscar ever given. 2. Kristen Stewart. For years, Kristen Stewart was the face of a generation, pale, distant, forever biting her lip and staring into the middle distance. As Bella Swan in Twilight, she became a global phenomenon, adored by millions of fans and equally mocked by millions of critics. The movies made her famous, rich, and iconic, but they also branded her with a label that's been impossible to shake, one of Hollywood's most emotionless performers. In Twilight, Stewart's acting felt less like a performance and more like a sleepwalk. Her voice hovered in a nervous mumble, her expressions rarely shifted beyond mild discomfort, and every romantic scene seemed powered by awkward blinking. She looked perpetually trapped between two emotions, confusion and panic. Critics joked that she was the only actress who could make falling in love look like a dentist appointment. For years, she became shorthand for bad acting, the meme of blank stares and heavy sighs that launched 1,000 YouTube compilations. But part of the problem wasn't just her, it was the role. Bella Swan was written as passive, expressionless, a vessel for teenage fantasy. Stewart played that too well. She stripped away theatricality until nothing was left but breathing and silence. It wasn't incompetence, it was misdirection. She was acting in a franchise that rewarded stillness, not soul. But to the world outside, nuance looked like emptiness. The backlash was merciless. Award shows mocked her. Talk shows turned her stiffness into punchlines. She was called robotic, wooden, emotionally vacant. Even her interviews didn't help. Nervous, fidgety, evasive. She seemed to confirm the stereotype. Hollywood quietly moved on, and Stewart, barely in her 20s, disappeared into indie obscurity. And then, something shifted. Away from the studio system, she found freedom and her craft. In small, personal films like Clouds of Sils, Maria, and Personal Shopper, she gave performances of eerie precision and quiet intensity. Suddenly, the same restraint that once made her laughable became magnetic. The industry that had mocked her now applauded her. She won a César Award in France, the first American woman to do so, and earned an Oscar nomination for Spencer, playing Princess Diana with a haunting vulnerability that silenced every joke ever made about her. Kristen Stewart didn't fix her acting, she reframed it. What once looked like detachment became control. The same stillness that seemed lifeless in Twilight now reads as subtlety, mystery, and truth. It's the ultimate Hollywood irony. She was never as bad as people said she was, just in the wrong story. Today, she's not trying to be likable. She doesn't smile for the camera, doesn't chase blockbusters, doesn't explain herself. And maybe that's why she finally works. She stopped performing for the audience and started performing for herself. Kristen Stewart's journey is proof that sometimes the worst actor in one decade can become the most interesting in the next. Because bad acting, when misunderstood, can just be the seed of a different kind of brilliance waiting for the right film to grow. 1. Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler is Hollywood's ultimate contradiction, a man who built an empire on being lazy. For decades, he's been mocked as the king of cheap laughs, the face of every low-effort comedy that somehow still makes millions. From Billy Madison to Grown Ups, Sandler's formula rarely changed. Goofy voices, fart jokes, and characters who never quite grew up. And yet, no matter how many critics call him the worst actor of his generation, he keeps winning at the box office, at Netflix, and even, occasionally, in art house cinema. His acting, at its worst, feels like he's daring the audience not to care. He mumbles, overacts, and often looks like he's trying not to laugh at his own lines. His movies feel improvised, his characters barely written. Reviewers called him Hollywood's most expensive inside joke. Jack and Jill, where he played both a man and his twin sister, was considered a cinematic crime scene, a film so bad it swept the Razzie Awards. His co-stars, often top-tier talents, looked stranded in scenes that felt like home videos with million-dollar budgets. But here's the strange part. Audiences love him for it. His movies may be dumb, but they're comfortable, the cinematic equivalent of fast food. You know what you're getting. Silly voices, loyal friends, a happy ending, and maybe a heartwarming twist buried under all the nonsense. People don't watch Adam Sandler for transformation. They watch him for escape. He doesn't challenge you, he gives you permission to stop thinking. Critics, meanwhile, have spent years trying to explain the paradox. How can someone so relentlessly mediocre still matter? The answer might lie in Sandler's rare flashes of brilliance. When he cares, he's extraordinary. In Punch Drunk Love, Uncut Gems, and the Meyerowitz Stories, he delivers performances full of pain, timing, and emotional chaos, reminders that the fool can be a genius when he chooses. Those moments are so powerful precisely because they're surrounded by years of nothing. It's as if he hides his talent behind self-parody, saving it for when no one expects it. Sandler himself doesn't seem to mind the insults. He's famously self-aware, once saying, "I know what I do isn't high art, but people laugh, and that's enough." And he's right. He's built a career on friendship, comfort, and consistency, flying his buddies to tropical resorts to make bad movies that still earn fortunes. He may not chase Oscars, but he's mastered something more elusive: freedom. In the end, Adam Sandler's legacy isn't about good or bad acting, it's about survival. He's outlasted every critic, every trend, every failure. While others crumble under expectations, he just keeps showing up in basketball shorts, smiling like a man who already knows he's won. Because maybe that's the secret. He stopped trying to impress Hollywood a long time ago, and Hollywood never stopped paying him for it. Adam Sandler might be the worst actor to become a legend, but in his own strange way, he's also one of the smartest. And there you have it, 15 movie stars who proved that fame and talent don't always go hand in hand. Some of them tried too hard, others didn't try at all, but each left a mark that Hollywood will never forget. Maybe that's the secret charm of bad acting. It's raw, unfiltered, and sometimes more honest than perfection. Watching a scene crumble can be just as memorable as watching one soar. Because when a star fails spectacularly, we don't look away, we lean in. Some of these actors learned, evolved, and even redeemed themselves. Others turned their flaws into a brand. But love them or laugh at them, they remind us that in Hollywood, it's better to be unforgettable than invisible. So what do you think? Would you rather be a bad actor everyone remembers, or a good one no one talks about? Either way, they've all proven one thing. In the world's biggest spotlight, even failure can shine.